All right, heads up now. We are going to go live on YouTube. All right. Hello. Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming. Good afternoon. I am Angela Carter. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm the program manager for Measure 110 with the OHA. I will be assisting our Tri-Chair Blue Valentine as your facilitator for today's meeting. The Oversight and Accountability Council welcomes and encourages community input. Members of the public are invited to submit public comments, or if you would like to get on our interested parties email list, you can reach out to oha.measure110 at dhsoha.state.or.us. And that will be in the chat as well for record. But that email address and quite a bit more information about our council can be found on the Measure 110 OAC website. If you'd like more information or support with community engagement, please reach out to Jessica Carroll. Our Oversight and Accountability Council members have requested that any OHA staff or anyone else present who is not a part of the council in this meeting space today, please introduce yourself in the chat. If you would be so kind to share your role with OHA, your pronouns, and if you are a subject matter expert of any kind, please let us know what your expertise is. All right. I believe we have, let's see, I'm going to do a quick count of folks and see where we are. I count 12 currently, so we may need to wait a moment to establish quorum for voting. I will do some reaching out, and if some folks on our team could also do some reaching out, let's see if we can get ourselves to capacity to make sure that we can vote for these 5 counties today and get the funding out as soon as possible. Thank you for your patience. Should just take us a few moments to get a few more folks in the room.
All right, it looks like we had Lakeisha just join us, and we have one other person who I just let in who is on the phone. So if the individual on the phone with the phone number, if you could please identify yourself, that'd be great. All right, I just let Nicole in. And if we can just find out who is on the phone, that might give us quorum, correct?
I believe that that is true.
Yeah. I will try to send a direct message.
I just let Henry in also.
Okay, great. Let's do one more head count and see where we're at. And then if we're good, we can take roll and get going.
Oh, Melinda's coming, so I think we're good. Why don't we just go with roll?
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll take Walter's out today, so I will take roll and votes. So
Thank you,
hello,
Sydney.
everybody.
Thank you.
If you could please stay here when I say your name, we'd really appreciate it. Start from the top. Amy,
Here.
Blue,
Here.
Carlos,
Here.
Caroline. I know she said she's on the phone.
Here.
There you are. Hi, Caroline. Dharma.
Here.
Hi, Dharma. Henry.
Here.
Thanks. I'm sorry, I skipped over Aowen, who is here. Okay. Hubert.
Here.
Thanks, Hubert. Karen. No Karen. Okay. Keisha.
Here.
Thanks, Keisha. Lana. It's not here. Leticia.
I'm here.
Hi, Leticia. Melinda.
Here.
Thanks, Melinda. Morgan.
Here with spotty Wi-Fi.
Thanks, Morgan. Nicole.
I'm here.
Thanks. And just let Karen in. Karen, you here?
Hello, I'm here.
Thank you. And Onisha? No, Onisha. Ron?
Here.
Thanks. Sabrina?
I'm here.
Zeb?
I'm here.
Thanks, Zeb. And then Steve. I see.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Steve. And then Dr. Richardson, I don't think is here.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Thank you. All right.
I'm on the phone.
We have 18.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So, excuse me. At this point,
So Angela, can you hear me?
I can hear you,
I'm
Caroline. Yes.
signing off the phone. Okay. I'm
Okay.
signing off the phone and I'm gonna enter. So let me back in, okay?
You got it.
We got you,
it.
Okay,
Caroline.
thank you. Okay.
All right. So at this point, we can get going. I am double checking on, okay. So we are going to be covering 5 counties today. And Blue, since I was not able to update you, today we have Clackamas, Douglas, Josephine, Union, and Yamhill counties to review with you all. However, before we jump into voting, I feel like it would be remiss of me not to say a few things. So very briefly, I'm just gonna take your ears for a moment. Substance use at its root is an attempt to treat pain that comes from trauma. And I just want to acknowledge that this has been a tremendously traumatic week for a lot of people. Jalen Walker, who was a 25-year-old assistant principal and wrestling coach, was pulled over in Akron, Ohio for a taillight that was actually working and was brutally murdered by police. And over the weekend, there were 12 mass shootings across the country, which increases our number in the US to 300 to date for this year. And on June 24th, Roe versus Wade was overturned, which jeopardizes bodily autonomy and puts the health and well-being of many people across our country at risk. And I want to acknowledge, because I know that I feel all of this trauma in my body, in my spirit, and I'm positive that you do too. Violence begets trauma, and trauma leads to substance use when people don't have the tools that they need to be able to cope with the pain. And it is truly the duty and purpose of government to protect us, to protect our health and our lives. And in order to do that, violence has to be stopped at a government level, at a systemic level. I don't have an answer as to how to stop systemic and systematic violence, but it is imperative that government not be complacent in this moment in the face of this violence. We have to act to protect the lives of the people we care for, the people that we are here for today. I am so grateful to all of you for the work that you're doing to improve the lives and health of so many people across our state. And I just want to acknowledge that we have a responsibility to do more to assure that the violence stops and the trauma never happens. We can't conquer a wave of trauma with treatment. We have to cut it off at the root. We have to stop the violence. Thank you for listening. And I will pass over to Blue if you would like to make any comments before we move on to the votes.
Thanks, Angela. I mean, I think you really said that very well. And I want to just thank you for taking the time to do that and to, acknowledge that, we're all humans, but people do see us as part of this government, as a part of a lot of this oppression and violence. And so I appreciate you acknowledging that. I don't really know how to follow that up. So we've got 5 counties today that we will be voting on. And Steve is going to be heading that up, I believe. So I will turn it over to Steve. And thank you again, Angela. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Blue. Thank you, Angela. We're going to save Clackamas for last. I think we were going to go in alphabetical order. We do have one loose end with Clackamas that we're hoping to resolve while we're on this call. So if we could bring up Douglas, please.
I know that we have.
Sorry, I am doing it right now, and I had Clackamas all teed up so that this.
I'm sure you did.
And
I'm
every
really
time,
sorry.
no, it's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
All right, Douglas County Region. Next slide, please. As you can see, we have 3 providers who you approved for Douglas County, and we had a missing component in supported employment. Next slide. The good news, as you can see from the allocation, this county region was initially under allocation, and so we had additional resources to put towards supportive employment. Next slide. And then here are the concerns that you raised during the subcommittee review. So the first question was whether the workforce stabilization funds that were listed in the budget would be only used for position that Measure 110 funds, And the answer from ADAPT is yes, workforce stabilization is for frontline staff providing those peer or substance use treatment services, including the CADCs. They are not going to be used for managers or administrative staff in any way. There were questions about the proposal for a sobering center, and that's not a structure that is well recognized. There are a few existing in Oregon and other places around the country. So ADAPT provided some information about what the sobering center is. It is a project that involves 8 beds for people who are intoxicated. And sometimes these individuals are picked up by law enforcement. Traditionally, they may be brought to an emergency department or even to a jail at times. A sobering center is an alternative site. And what I look for in these sobering centers is that it's not just a drop-off place for people who may be experiencing some physiological complications as a result of their intoxication. And what they're committing to here is that they're supporting this sobering center with sufficient nursing and medical oversight so that they're monitoring people every 15 minutes to ensure that something bad isn't happening to them. And they're also using the opportunity while folks are at the sobering center to connect them to other resources should they have an interest in them. So next slide, please. Which positions will receive the staff incentive payments, and the incentives are for peers in the grant, plus the CADCs, other peers in the county that are working for the agency. Also includes lower paid positions like residential assistants and people, and it does not include the registered nurse at the detox center, for example. Are all services low barrier? ADAPT confirms that they are. They're all provided regardless of a person's ability to pay or what medical coverage they have. If we're working with a person who's intoxicated or actively using, and peers working out of outpatient work with people will help them engage in a process of getting the services that they need. And then the only other question, I believe, was whether Boulder Care is providing technology for clients who can't afford it, and their response is yes, and you'll see an adjustment to their budget to confirm that. Next slide. Here is the original budget that was requested among the 3 organizations, and you'll see that $424,000 that was unallocated. The new request primarily goes to ADAPT to provide those supportive employment services. I think there's also a budget shift in Boulder Care to ensure that they had funding available for technology. Next slide. Here's those additional considerations. ADAPT providing the supportive employment services. Those funds will support 3 new peer supervision or peer provider positions dedicated to the supportive employment programming. They will also added additional housing vouchers, clothing vouchers, bus passes to the supportive employment program. So it's not just staff engagement. And then Boulder Care was not approved for harm reduction and moved that budget over to ensure that they had sufficient funds to purchase technology for people who need it. Next slide. And so this is the final overview that include now all of the elements, included supportive employment. And I think that's the last slide. Are there questions?
Sabrina's got her hand up and then Blue.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, Steve, did you say that the sobering station was for people that use substances and would otherwise like have police contact? Is that what you said, Steve?
Yeah, the sobering center is designed for people who are currently intoxicated, and oftentimes the use is triggered by engagement with law enforcement, and it gives options for people. They can also go there voluntarily. Family can take them there. But it gives an alternative when law enforcement is involved for people to receive services other than an emergency department, or sometimes people are taken to jail.
So that isn't that, excuse me, so that means from drugs, correct? From substances?
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you. Sobering
drugs or
station.
alcohol, either. Yep.
Oh, for drugs or alcohol?
Yes. Lou, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just, you touched on this briefly. I just wanted to clarify. So I don't have a lot of experience or understanding of sobering centers. Are there some cases where people are sort of involuntarily taken to these sobering centers, or is it always a voluntary place that folks go?
So my understanding is law enforcement may transport people, and I'm not sure what their experience is, but it's not a place where people are involuntarily held if they're transported there. So they have the ability to walk away from those services. They're encouraged to stay, but they're not required. It's not locked.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, welcome. Other questions? If no other questions, would entertain a motion.
Oh, Keisha, you have your hand up.
Oh, sorry, Keisha.
Yeah, I was just wondering around the facts around it being involuntary. I mean, I have been to sobering centers and no way could I walk out the door. I'm just wondering, is that something new or is that concrete or is it a guess?
I'm sorry, Keisha, I didn't quite hear you. Were you saying that in your experience, you were required to stay at a sobering center?
Yeah, I was required to stay until they felt I was ready to leave. So I was just wondering, is it something new or was that just a guess or something concrete that it's involuntary?
Yeah, Keisha, well, first of all, I'm sorry for that experience. Second of all, the sobering center proposed by Douglas County is staffed 24/7, but lightly. It's like a single staff is there and they're not security. They're meant to be supportive of folks. So there is no way if someone wants to leave that they can be required to stay, and they're not licensed at a level that is a locked facility that requires a different level of staffing and licensure. So it wouldn't be acceptable or within regulatory authority for people to be held in that sobering center facility that they're describing. Did I answer your question, Keisha?
Kinda.
Yeah, I was going to relate an experience I had with a sobering station here in Portland years ago. Without going into all the details, I was pulled over by law enforcement going the wrong way on a one-way with no headlights on. And the officer determined that it was probably that he needed to do something with me. Based on our conversation, he decided that instead of taking me to jail, he would take me to the detox if I agreed to go. And if I agreed to go, then I would remain there until the staff deemed that I was sober enough to care for myself and not be in jeopardy of being vulnerable to others as a public inebriate. And so I was admitted. They essentially put you in a room and they watch you, or they put me in a room and they watch me. They check my blood pressure and pulse and just monitored me and had conversations with me up until the point where they felt like I had sobered up enough to leave. And then I left, and that was it. Just thought I'd share that experience.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Henry?
Yeah, I just appreciate the conversation and appreciate everyone's willingness to share a personal experience, because I think that's very powerful and important to share. I think, like was stated, having been a director's designee as a crisis worker, I have had the need to, place people under a mental health hold and send them to a secure facility where they weren't allowed to leave due to their level of whether they're highly, suicidal or psychotic, which is different, it sounds like, than the proposed facility that Douglas County's wanting to do, which as a sobering center would be not a locked facility, right? So they would be, they wouldn't have the legal ability to restrain anyone. And I think that sounds like a really good option. I also believe that there are times when people are, potentially a risk to themselves or others, whether that's due to a mental health concern or due to their ingestion of substances, and they may need to be in a secure facility like the Multnomah County CATC, I think it is, or something like that, or an emergency department. So I think it just depends. Again, these are things that are on a spectrum, and it sounds like, on the lower end, Douglas County is wanting to provide a safe place for people who are in, under the influence of substances and maybe not able to make good decisions, so that they don't have to go to jail, which I think is a wonderful option. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Henry. I see
Amy?
Amy's hand and then Karen's. Oh, sorry.
Is
My bad.
is there been a motion made yet? Sorry, I was on the phone. Is there been a motion made yet?
No, not yet.
No.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this county, Douglas County, right? Douglas County. I'd like to make a motion that we approve Douglas County.
I'll second.
Karen, do you have something
if
for
you-
discussion?
Yeah, I would have made the second, but I wanted to just say that just for a little history, Oregon back in the 1970s created some laws that literally make it's not legal to discriminate against people who are, in the law called it inebriated. And so some of these sobering centers started up back then in the 70s. The one in Lane County called Buckley, it's been around a long time. And then there's one in Portland, of course, everybody knows Central City, but it's not a detox program. It's literally, you just, like Ron said, you watch somebody sober up. And Oregon for a long time has had, I think, some progressive laws on the book. That was one of them, because we did not want to criminalize people that were intoxicated on the street. So that's when this started happening. So the Douglas County one, I think, was funded back in 2015-16, but only funded to get going. The legislature did not provide operational funds. So I'm actually glad to see that this was part of their application. So thanks.
Any further discussion? Is it Sydney today?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion to approve Douglas County was seconded. No further discussion, so we'll start at the top. Amy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thanks, Amy. Blue?
Yes.
Thanks, Blue. Carlos?
Yes.
Thank you. Caroline?
Yes.
Thank you. Dharma?
Yes.
Thanks, Dharma. Aowen still not here. Henry?
Yes.
Thanks, Henry. Hubert?
Yes.
Thank you. Karen?
Yes.
Thank you. Keisha?
Yes.
Thank you. Lana still not here as well. Leticia?
Yes.
Thank you. Melinda? Did we lose Melinda?
Yes.
There she is. Thank you, Melinda. Morgan?
Yes.
Thanks, Morgan. Nicole?
Hold on. Oh my God.
Nicole, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Oh, yes. Sorry. The answer is yes.
No worries. Thanks.
Thank you.
Onisha
Onisha voted yes in the chat.
in the chat. Okay, thank you. And Ron?
Yes.
Thank you. Sabrina?
Yes.
Thanks, Sabrina. Zeb?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. That passes with 17.
Thank you. And then Steve, is it Josephine that is up next, I think?
Yes, please. All right, sorry, I was texting back and forth. I think we have Clackamas ready to go, so but we'll save that still for last. So next county region, Josephine, next slide. So you can see that all of the areas were covered in this and pretty robustly. Next slide. $1.6 million under allocation. So this triggered the process that you authorized previously for us to reach out to the housing providers, and then any further unallocated would be prorated. Next slide. Here are the concerns. HIV Alliance, how our clients match with peers, and they describe outreach and engagement activities to connect people with peers. They report that peers will be conducting street outreach, will conduct with potential clients during the outreach. As I was reading this question, I wasn't sure if that was the question that was being asked or whether that folks were looking for a matching process to sort of ensure that the peers matched with clients really met their individual needs. So I'm not sure if anybody has a follow-up, but you can see there that they work to provide a thoughtful response. The Family Nurturing Center, will funding only go to Josephine County? They responded that it fully intends to use all the funds that they receive through Measure 110 for Josephine County positions and its residents. Next slide. And here you see the budget implications, adapt, and you'll see on the next slide where these are. Max's mission, options for Southern Oregon, all had budget adjustments. Next slide. So adapt removed the CADC training part, which was not approved by the subcommittee. Max's mission removed the real property purchase in accordance with the subcommittee guidance, and options for Southern Oregon removed the nurse practitioner salary per subcommittee guidance, and you can see that this actually is further reducing the allocated funds for this. Next slide. So this again triggered the under allocation guidance. So we first reached out to the housing providers to see if they were willing and able to expand offerings, and then with any remaining allocations to prorate that. Next slide. So here's the overview of the housing additions. Those providers that were approved for housing were able to expand their offerings. Adapt committed to purchasing a housing complex within Josephine County for single residence occupancy to serve at least 15 unhoused individuals with substance use disorder. The housing will provide stability for people who are unable to address health and other needs due to housing instability, and will not be abstinence only, so that it's a low barrier in that respect as well. Project is an addition to ADAPT's previously approved low barrier emergency housing that you all approved. On Track will purchase a new transitional housing development in Josephine County and fund a new peer support specialist to work with individuals as they transition through treatment and into permanent housing. We'll also purchase a house to support individuals who are on wait lists awaiting residential treatment or detox services. Grassroots agreed to purchase a building for a new supportive housing program, and HIV Alliance expanded its housing voucher program within Josephine County. Next slide. And so you can see the increases in budget based on those commitments for each of the organizations. And there still remains $28,000 at the end of this, so they're just modestly under budget. Because of sort of a flurry last minute, we decided not to try to spread that $28,000 on a prorated basis among the other providers, and so these funds would go to access to care funding. And that was really just a time element as a lot of these budget changes were happening last minute. And that's the end of the slide. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Henry?
Yeah, Steve, thank you for that presentation. I really appreciate it. I noticed that you said the part of the budget that was left over that wasn't allocated to Josephine County would be then going back to access to care. And I'm wondering, just to be clear, it sounds like when that money goes back into the access to care budget, that can be used for the whole state, if that's accurate.
Yep, that's accurate.
My request I just want to advocate for Southern Oregon, being someone that was raised in Southern Oregon and watching the meth epidemic in Southern Oregon and working in treatment in Southern Oregon. I can say they could use the money. So if there's a way we could allocate those resources to Southern Oregon, I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Henry.
Ron?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm really pleased with the way that the money is going to housing. That expansion was beautiful. I'm really happy to see it. It was kind of one of my concerns as we were going around the counties, in the counties that we were working on. And, it was, as we were going around the counties, I was seeing housing kind of pulled away because it was the most, in some cases, it was the most expensive part of the budget. And so it's really great to see housing being added back, these excess funds. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. We were really pleased with how these providers stepped up with their ideas and their projects. I think we agree it turned out really well.
There is a question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Dharma has a question in the chat about, wasn't there a different process for the remaining funds that was under the amount of the budget limits, that it was to stay in the county? So I don't know if you can wrap that up in a bow nicely, Steve, but
yep,
he's right.
So yeah, so that's exactly right, Dharma. So the two-part process was if a county region was under allocation, we'd first go to the housing providers and work to utilize those funds for housing. And if there remained an additional amount of money after that, that it would be prorated across all of the non-housing providers. In accordance with your guidance, what we should have done is taken that $28,000 and spread it across those who weren't housing providers. The only reason that we didn't, and we can still do that if you'd like to delay your vote a week, is that we could not get that work done on the last minute. The $28,000 showed up unexpectedly in the budget yesterday, and what it would have required is for us to reach out to the non-housing providers to have them review their budgets, to make a commitment to how they would spend those, to capture that in their budgets and to put it into the narrative. And we simply ran out of time to do that. So we were faced with a choice of what we thought was a relatively modest amount of unutilized funds at $28,000, given the entire budget, and getting it approved this week or bringing it back next week. And that's totally up to you folks.
Yeah, I think I'd be really supportive, in line with what Henry's talking about too, especially considering regional equity issues, that I would be more comfortable personally waiting to vote on this to allow you all time to negotiate those things. I know that any access to care funds will likely get eaten up by people with more ability to write grants for those things. And that was really reflected in our original access to care. So just wanted to put that out there.
Yep, thanks, Dharma.
So Keisha, and then I see Sabrina's hand as well.
I forgot what I was gonna say. Come back to me, please.
Sabrina?
Yeah, can you hear me? I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. One question was, This process that we just used right now, Steve, will that be the normal way we're going to conduct business as a council as we move forward? Like if the dollars amount show up at the last minute, then they'll automatically go to access to care. And the second question is, have we decided how we're going to utilize people are going to apply for the access to care grants? And if so, if maybe Angela or Jessica can catch me up to speed. I missed a couple of meetings, but I remember the first part where you talked about we would distribute the funding to the housing and then do the prorating, but I don't ever remember actually diving in and talking about the access to care. So if somebody could catch me up to speed later, I'd super appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Sabrina. And I can do that quickly. So, the guidance that we got was reflected from you all, was reflected in the slides, and it did direct us at OHA to take those monies and spread it across on a prorated basis to the non-housing providers. And so we didn't do that in this case. And so this is really a question for you all. It seems that if you vote to have us delay it and a week, which we certainly can do, and work with those providers to utilize those $28,000, we're happy to do that. I think we also are working along with your clear direction to get money out to providers as quickly as possible. And so that was the balance that we were striking, is $28,000 in that scale budget enough to hold this up a week? Should we do that on behalf of the county region, or would you prefer us to move more quickly? And that decision is totally in your hands.
Thank you, Steve. So Keisha, did you remember?
Yeah, so my question was about, so if we're opening access to care anyway, that was kind of the push to like prorate and spread it against the around the organizations in the county, because we wanted to kind of not have to do access to care. But if we're doing them anyway, and I might have missed it, I don't remember. Did we vote on that? Because
I could take that call.
Yeah, so
sorry.
Yeah. The inequity with trying to prorate over different organizations is not, but yeah.
Yeah, so Keisha, I could take a first run at that. I think our caution was that we don't actually have an access to care grant process developed yet, and that if there was a significant amount of money at that point, as of a couple of weeks ago, we were looking at, I think, $14 million potentially in access to care grant funding, which is significant, of course. And that because we don't have a process, and because the council very quickly needs to begin to focus on the next round of burn grant funds, our caution is could we find a way to minimize or the need for access to care, because the bulk of those dollars would go out in the burn grant funds. And so that's the pathway that, and the guidance that you gave us. In whether you as a council want to ensure that as few dollars as possible are left over, it's likely that there will be some either in this process or later, because providers can't use all the funds or need to return them for some reason. So we're unlikely to stay at zero, but I understand, and we support the idea that we would leave as few dollars as possible in those access to care grant funds.
So Amy, and then Ron, and then maybe we can make a motion after that.
So this will be just perfect for you then, Blue, because it was made perfectly clear that if we decided to open the bag of worms called access to care at this juncture, that it was going to cause some issues for people to get the money out to them, because we have to go back and we have to start doing stuff. And we were not doing that. We voted on it. It's a dead stick. So we need to keep the money in the county. I appreciate that money popped up unexpectedly, but I feel that in my own view that it would behoove us for you to just head them aside and get that handled with them, instead of of bringing it this way because it's just going to open up a bag of worms and we don't need that. We've already had enough delays. So I would like to make a motion that we delay looking at this county this week and allow OHA time to revisit and shuffle the funds where they need to in the county. That's my motion.
Henry.
Yeah, I just, I don't want to, I appreciate what you said, Amy and Steve, the thinking of, is 28,000 worth holding up the funding for a week? I don't have an answer to that. I don't really have an opinion. What I do know is that, thinking about having more folks that can do the work in areas where there's a need, and especially in rural areas. 28,000 is what % of a peer support specialist's salary? The more folks we have that can do this work, the better. I think it helps retention. And I think it also helps to pay these folks as much as we can. So that's my concern. I can second Amy's motion if you'd like. I'll just do that for I don't know, time.
Thank you. And I will just throw this out there. We don't have to decide today, but I'm pretty sure that that money could also go towards naloxone in the area, which is a budget that has increased dramatically every year, the past couple of years. So any further discussion? Then it is Sydney, if I can turn it over to you.
Did we get a second on that motion?
Yeah, from Henry.
Yeah, just an administrative note. I think we still had an outstanding motion and second on the original to approve Josephine County, if I'm not mistaken. I think that needs to be dealt with first. Or did I get that wrong?
Did we? I don't think we have. I don't think we got that.
I might. Okay. All right. Thanks, Ron. My bad.
So I put the motion in the chat, but just to restate it, it is, now I'm confused on the county. Is it Josephine? I'm so sorry.
Is.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, sorry. Motion to delay approval on Josephine County to allow OHA time to revisit and keep the funds in the county. Amy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Blue?
Yes.
Thank you. Carlos?
Yes.
Thank you. Caroline?
I'm going to abstain.
Thanks, Caroline. Dharma?
Yes.
Aowen is still not here. Henry?
Yes.
Thanks, Henry. Hubert?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Keisha? Keisha, you there?
Isha, we saw you come off mute for a second, but we didn't hear your vote. Do you mind? There might be an issue with audio. The mute is coming off, but we can't
Yes,
hear
I
you.
don't know if you heard me.
Great, got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Keisha. Lana, still not here. Leticia?
Yes.
Thank you. Melinda? Is that a yes? I think we lost Melinda. Try to come back to her again. Morgan?
You have a yes in the chat for Morgan.
Okay, thank you. Nicole?
Yes.
Thank you. Onisha?
Yes.
Thank you. Ron?
Yes.
Sabrina?
I'm going to abstain.
And Zeb?
Yes.
Melinda, are you back? No. Okay, I'm gonna mark her as NA, and that passes with 14.
Okay, I think, is it Union County that's next, Steve? All right.
Yes, please.
All right, sharing now.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. Oops. There we go. So Union had 2 approved providers, Center for Human Development and Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living, which we've seen before. All service areas were covered with some duplication in housing services and harm reduction. Next slide. As you could see, the budget was the key problem or challenge here. Requested 4.6 and having 1.8 available, so they needed to cut almost $3 million. Next slide. These are the concerns. Can the Center for Human Development provide a rationale for highly paid staff positions or otherwise reduced salaries? So 2 parts, and you'll see this in more detail in the budget. They cut back staff pretty dramatically, but maintaining the peer and direct service positions. And they also took a look at the salaries that they were paying for leadership positions and others, and found that those were competitive wages for Union County. In other words, that's what they needed to pay people to be able to recruit and retain. Next slide. Can Center for Human Development provide additional detail regarding pet costs? And they originally had a program at $27,000 for boarding pets for owners who may be unwilling or unable to attend residential treatment. And they cut that budget dramatically back to $2,500, so less than 10% of the original, but kept it in at a more modest amount. Next slide. Here are the changes to the budget, and you'll see more detail on this. EOCIL reduced their budget by $217,000. CHD reduced their budget by $2.6 million, bringing them within the allocation. Next slide. Oop, and I think, I'm sorry, I have these in notes.
Yeah, that's the last slide.
Yep, thank you. So here are the budget changes. Eastern Oregon Center for Living removed the cost for their director of administration, the registered nurse, the behavioral health specialist personnel costs. They are providing a registered nurse and a behavioral health specialist. They removed syringe supplies, and they'll obtain those for free through the clearinghouse, which will be extended, by the way, and refunded. They reduced capital outlay from $325,000 down to $285,000. That still allowed them to provide the housing that they proposed, and they reduced a vehicle purchase, and that still allowed them to provide that outreach and mobile exchange that they had proposed. The more dramatic cuts came from the Center for Human Development. They reduced their staff that focused on retaining the direct care staff, including CADC, 2.5 peer support specialists, a youth peer, a half-time position, a house manager, supportive employment specialist, community liaison, and housing coordinator. And then they reduced their capital outlay costs pretty dramatically from almost $1,955,000 down to $250,246. They'll still be able to cover the drop-in center lease and recovery housing for 2 sites. They reduced services and supplies by nearly $1 million. They cut travel, childcare, respite beds, medication costs, copay, outreach, facilities maintenance, and they reduced their training costs by $45,000, and that's how they reached their allocation. So that's it for Union, unless there's questions.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Union County.
I'll second that. Discussion? Sydney, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Blue. All right, the motion is to approve Union County and was seconded. Amy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Blue?
Yes.
Thank you. Carlos?
Yes.
Caroline?
Yes.
Dharma?
Yes.
Awen? Henry?
Yes.
Thank you. Hubert?
Yes.
It's Hubert. Karen?
Yeah, I'm going to make a statement. The director of CHD is on my board of directors. It's not a conflict. I am voting yes.
Thank you for that. Keisha?
Did you say Keisha?
Keisha, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Lana still not here. Leticia?
Yes.
Thank you. Melinda?
Yes.
Thank you. Morgan?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Onisha?
Yes.
Thank you. Ron?
Yes.
Thank you. Sabrina?
Yes.
Thank you. And Zeb.
Yes.
All right, and that passes with 17.
Thank you. And then I believe, are we at Yamhill? Is that the next one?
We are. Yep.
Awesome.
Awesome. Next slide, please. So you can see Yamhill, robust provider network. All the boxes are checked and multiple providers. Next slide. The main challenge is the allocation was about 7.3 and they were over 10, so had close to $3 million to cut. And unfortunately, due to an initial math error on our part, they first cut about $1.5 million, and then we had to come back to them to ask them to cut another $1 million after they had already gotten there. So we put Yamhill County folks under some additional stress along the way due to our error, but they did a really nice job of collaborating together. Next slide. Here were the concerns. Can Recovery Works Northwest provide additional rationale on highly paid staff? They reduced their budget by $125,000, including cost to waiting for hire, knowing that there would be some delays in hiring. They provided OHA a substantial rationale for including some of the higher paid positions, including a supervising physician position, as well as credentialed mental health provider positions, why they needed that. And they removed naloxone for their budget as they were not funded by the subcommittee for that. How will Provoking Hope ensure peers are provided proper support and supervision? They will continue to partner with Yamhill County Health and Human Services to ensure an existing relationship where Yamhill County has provided supervision for those peers as they have been over the last 10 years. Next slide. How will Virginia Garcia ensure livable wage for employees? They updated their budget to provide a higher pay for their certified recovery mentors and updated a hiring plan to a more realistic timeline, resulting in some salary savings for the region. OEC chose not to fund Yamhill Health and Human Services harm reduction services, but would like to fund one of the two nurses positions. And so they did cut one of the positions and kept the other, in addition to some other significant reductions I think we talk about later, resulting in a $1.7 million decrease in their budget. Next slide. And in here you'll see all of those reductions. Alana Club reduced their program coordinator position to half-time. And I'm not going to do these in order because they're not in order on my reference sheet here. Provoking Hope delayed hiring and reduced staffing to reduce their administrative oversight and data management position costs. Recovery Works reduced their timeline reduced their budget for billable positions. They fixed their formula to include capital expenditures for building and van, and that they omitted some costs from their original budget, so they had to fix that. They reduced their training budget, they reduced their budget for vehicles, they reduced their budget for facilities, lease or purchasing, and they reduced their budget for facility improvements. Virginia Garcia delayed the hiring of a second CADC position and certified recovery mentor, and reduced laptop costs, finding alternative sources for that technology. Yamhill Community Action delayed hiring and reduced associated costs and supplies, reduced 2 case managers for $125,000 reduction. Yamhill Health and Human Services delayed hiring, removed 1 of the nurses per your guidance, removed $615,000 in capital outlay costs. And I just want to check to see if people can still hear me. I had some problems with my connectivity.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, thank you. So Yamhill County reduced their budget $650,000 for transitional housing and found an alternate funding source for those, reduced their supplies. And then Encompass, Yamhill County, and Providence had slight reductions and found alternative sources to cover their costs. And at the moment, I cannot see the screen.
That is the last slide.
Here. Awesome. All right, happy to take questions.
Can we make a motion to approve Yamhill County, please?
I'll second that. Any more discussion? Okay, Sydney.
Thanks, Blue. Motion to approve Yamhill County was seconded. Amy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Blue.
Yes.
Carlos?
Yes.
Thank you, Caroline.
Yes.
Dharma?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
Hubert?
Yes.
Thank you, Karen.
Yes.
Keisha?
Yes.
Thank you. Lana's still not here. Leticia?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. Thank you. Melinda?
Yes.
Thank you. Morgan?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Onisha?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Sabrina?
That's a yes.
Thank you. And Zeb?
Yes.
All right, that passes with 17.
Thank you. And then I think we're going to circle back to Clackamas. Steve, is that where we're headed next?
Yep, we are. And I'm still having some network problems, so 1 second. Sorry about this inopportune time to lose my internet. Here we go. All right, I can't see the screen at the moment, so I'm just going to walk through the slides, and I can keep track of the number if that works for folks.
That works.
And I'll just assume that you're going to see what I'm seeing. All right, so I'm on slide 2 that shows the initial matrix, and what you'll see is I think there were some 16 providers. One thing I'll point out in this particular slide is Central City Concern. Let's see. Yes, it shows it's the last row on this. They had originally applied for a variety of different types of services, and they pulled out for their own reasons. And the short version of that is they, after they had submitted their request, they found another funding source for these services, and so had what they needed, and so pulled out. But you can also see from the matrix that all the services that Central City Concern proposed providing are duplicated by other providers here. I'm now on slide 3. So what you see here is that Clackamas County ended up being meaningfully under budget at with $4.1 million under its allocation. Next slide. Here are the concerns and feedback. There were on Harmony Academy what were seen to be high salaries, and what they pointed out in their feedback is that in addition to the salaries, because of the nature of the academy and what they're required, they need to allocate additional payroll costs on top of the annual salaries of those positions. So that accounts for those additional salary costs. LifeStance, there was a question on whether all services, specifically employment, are low barrier, and LifeStance confirmed all of their services are low barrier, including supported employment. Morrison Child and Family Services increased their pure wages. You'll see that reflected in the budget in accordance to council direction. New Avenues for Youth, there was a question on the classification of staff being hired. And they showed that there was 1 FTE CADC, 2 peer support specialists, and an FTE peer trainer manager. Outside In, there was a clarification that Outside In will serve Black and Indigenous individuals, and they confirmed that they do not turn anyone away, and that they are explicitly stating that if awarded funding, that they will provide those services to Black and Indigenous people. Phoenix Rising is the organization providing culturally specific services, and they confirm that they do. They'll be using the new Measure 110 funding to hire more diverse staff, to increase wages for peers, and support culturally specific outreach. Next slide. This slide 5 just confirms Central City Concern had dropped out of the region. The reasons I talked about. There's a couple of different budget slides, as you'll see how we allocated the under allocation funding. In this first slide, you'll see Morrison Child and Family Services increased their budget by $56,000. That's that additional investment in staff salaries that you requested. So that's reflected in that initial budget. And you can see that there's still that $4.1 million that is under allocation for this county region. Next slide. So this just reminds you of the discussion we were having a few minutes ago on the direction that you gave to OHA, that we reach out to approve housing providers first. And unlike Josephine, there were just 2 housing providers here in Clackamas. And then you'll see how we prorated the additional funding across the other providers. So these were the 2 housing providers that we contacted: Bridges to Change and Transcending Hope. These are the additions to housing that both organizations were able to propose. Bridges to Change offered an additional 50 housing options that are recovery oriented, 20 what they're calling stabilization housing beds. These are recovery oriented, low barrier housing for people new to recovery or undecided in their recovery process. It also includes peer providers and on-site support. And then an additional 30 beds of supported housing, recovery-oriented housing model that aims to enhance outcomes for those navigating recovery. Peer providers and on-site support are included. Transcending Hope proposed to add 6 new low barrier houses, 2 of those culturally specific homes for the Latinx population in partnership with 2 organizations for referrals, transitioning to sober rental homes to low barrier program housing, and a women and children specific housing, and 2 low barrier program men's homes, includes housing managers and navigators. You can see this is the slide that includes those changes. So about $1 million for the 50 beds that bridges to change, and about $250,000 increase to the Transcending Hope proposal. Excuse me. So here's, after those, if we could go back to slide 9 for just a second, you can see that we've gone from about $4 million down in the green down to $3 million. So after those changes, we had $3 million, and in accordance with your direction, we prorated that $3 million across the remaining 15 organizations. And this summary just gives you a sense of what you're buying for that $3 million across those 15 organizations in a really brief way. But we have detailed budgets for all of these for your review if requested. For 4D, they added additional funds for 2 additional peers, an additional supervisor, and additional office space with a client van, $50,000 for supportive housing funding for recovery center furnishings and equipment, and increased funds for client support expenses. Harmony added an office manager, a 3/4 time school counselor, a director of peer services, and a recovery mentor staffing. Phoenix Rising proposed adding a supervisor and associated cost to oversee the work of certified peer recovery mentors. New Avenues proposed to lease and retrofit a drop-in space in the Clackamas County for youth and young adults. To access prevention, harm reduction, and recovery supports, also adding a half-time mental health therapist to support the peer support team. Next slide, please. Parrot Creek proposes to increase salaries to match inflation, hire an additional licensed clinical social worker, increase costs of supplies, technology, office space due to inflation. MAHALO will hire 2 to 3 additional peers, certified recovery mentors, adding increasing rent budget, added Chest Health, a virtual recovery platform. Northwest Family Services proposed adding an additional CADC, case manager, peer support specialist, and certified recovery mentor, and bringing salaries to in comparison today's market and inflation. Youth ERA proposed hiring and associate costs of expanding or adding a 1.0 FTE and increased mileage budget to the new standard rate. And Outside In added a half-time syringe exchange specialist, increased budget for staff training, transportation, increased budget for harm reduction supplies, increased some staff salaries, van budget to align with rising inflation and costs, and Cascadia added a half-time supervisor to manage the Measure 110 program, and updated administrative costs that were previously understated. 2 more. Outside In eliminated funds for property lease, added purchase price of a new facility, and reduces vehicles budget. And Volunteers of America added a peer mentor to conduct outreach and engage with indigent clients. Next slide, please. Number 13 shows these changes. Actually, this is not the most current version. What it does show is Harmony Academy is actually an increase here. So that's a mistake. Sorry that we had a last minute flurry of slides going around. But the rest of the numbers are accurate, and at the bottom you'll see that it's no longer over or under allocation, that all the funds in accordance with these proposals have been distributed. Life Stance and Metro Plus both declined to increase their budgets, and so those prorated funds, which would have ordinarily gone to them, were distributed across the remainder of the providers. And this is the final version, only noting the elimination of CCC at their request. So that was a lot in a hurry, and sorry I lost both my internet and my voice, but happy to take questions if folks have them. I just note that I can't see the screen.
All right, you did great, Steve. So Keisha has had her hand up for a little while, so go ahead, Keisha.
So I'm just wondering about these additional beds. Like, is the property already secured? Is that going to take time to secure it? You got to look for it. That and all these random prorated allocations is some of the stuff that we already voted down and against funding. Now we are funding because we're trying to spread this money. I just see it less impact than those most affected by the war on drugs. I just have to say that.
Yeah, thank you. And I got your question. So I'm not sure about. I'm not sure I have any comments on the second part, but on the first part is I think it's a mix of both in terms of the providers already having the housing to work with. I know Transcending Hope was looking to repurpose a couple of its houses. I believe Bridges to Change had eyes on property that they were hoping to connect with and to be able to purchase, but I think they did not have all the properties that they would be using for housing already under their ownership.
Onisha?
Yeah, mine's is just simple. Can I vote on the bulk of them if I have a conflict of interest with one of them? How does that work?
Hey, Onisha, so we did have,
Allison?
oh.
Hello?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I captured the whole question. Could you repeat that, please?
Yes, can I vote on the bulk of the orgs that were read off for Clackamas if I had a conflict of interest with one?
So I'm not allowed to give individual ethics advice. So the suggestion would be to contact the Ethics Commission about for guidance on this issue.
Yeah, well, you guys are voting right now after this conversation, so I guess I'll just abstain from this vote. Thank you.
Yeah, Onisha,
Thanks.
I just wanted to say that's what other members have done. So.
And Ron, I see your hand up.
Right, I was going to make a motion to approve the agreements for Clackamas County.
I'll second that. Any other discussion?
I had some. I just don't feel comfortable throwing money at organizations that we already had concerns about, and they're getting like really big chunks of money. And we've already, I don't know, I just see the inequity in it. I just had to say that and put it out there. To go the faster way, we are doing a disservice to those most impacted by the war on drugs.
Ron, did you have something else? No. Any other discussion? Okay. Sydney, then I guess I will turn it over to you.
Sorry about that. I was trying to admit Dr. Richardson. Okay, so the motion to approve Clackamas County, and it was seconded. Amy, how do you vote? Come on, Amy. Blue, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Carlos?
Yes. Sorry, my button. There we go.
No
Yes.
problem. Thank you, Carlos. Caroline?
Yes.
Dharma?
Abstain.
All right. Eowyn still not present. Henry? Saw Henry had to go. Skip him. Hubert?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Keisha?
No.
Lana still not here. Leticia?
Yes.
Melinda?
No.
Morgan?
Abstain.
Nicole?
I vote yes.
Onisha?
I have to abstain. Sorry.
It's okay. Thanks, Onisha. Ron?
Yes.
Sabrina?
I'm gonna abstain.
And Zeb.
Abstain.
So that only got, I apologize, I'm not super familiar with the rules, but we got 8 yes votes, 5 abstentions and 2 no's.
We also have Amy, who has rejoined us, I think.
Okay. Sorry, I meant to go back to her. Amy?
You did. I'm so sorry. Tell me the motion.
Motion is to approve Clackamas County and was seconded.
Okay.
Tell her the vote says they stand because she missed that.
Yeah, and the thing is I heard part of it when I was first in here, and then I had to run to deal with the issue. So I apologize deeply. I am gonna abstain.
Okay, thanks, Amy. So that's 8 yes, 6 abstains, 2 no's.
So the motion should carry.
Majority voted.
Allison?
That's equal.
Did we establish that quorum is present?
Yes.
Quorum is present, yes.
Okay. And what was the vote composition?
8 yes, 6 abstain, 2 no.
That's a tie.
Sorry, I'm just doing some calculations here. Give me a second. Do you want to come back to this if there's another county to review?
I believe that this is our last county for the day.
I just feel bad, you guys, because I didn't get to hear the comments or the concerns, you know? And so I that's why I chose to abstain. But I really would like to approve it in county, but I just, you know, I didn't.
So we had a total of 16 votes. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I don't believe that's sufficient to pass the motion.
Okay.
So abstain does not mean no. Abstain means you just don't want to vote yes or no. So I don't understand why it doesn't pass.
It doesn't mean yes either.
And some of them I would have been willing to vote yes on, but the one person I can't legally vote at all on was lumped in. So it kind of tied my hands.
Can I change my vote to a yes?
Man. I don't think we should force people. I don't know.
I'm not forcing. I saw part of the breakdown. I saw how big of a chunk they had to change around. I just didn't get to hear the concerns and stuff.
So one of the concerns was we were throwing extra money at folks that we already had concerns for. And those most impacted by the war on drugs are losing again because we're trying to go the faster, easier way. And then we're funding stuff that we said we weren't going to fund.
Okay, well, I have no conflict of interest with this county. I'm confused whether on the abstention, but I can change my vote to yes, just fine. Because I have no conflict of interest with Clackamas County specifically.
I don't have a conflict either with the whole county. I just have a conflict with one organization, and they read it all. We're voting on all of them together.
Yeah, I'm confused about that too, Anisha, because I have a conflict with one organization, but not their operations in this county, though. Their operations in a different county. So I'm confused whether or not I should be abstaining here or not, because what happens in Clackamas County doesn't affect me whatsoever.
But is it the same?
I do see Dharma's had her hand up for a minute. So go ahead, Dharma. And then if folks have other stuff, just raise your hands.
I think that it would be prudent for us to delay this vote until next week for folks to seek ethical guidance on their votes. I wouldn't want anyone to rush into a vote and get themselves into trouble. I also think that a week's difference and ensuring that none of us get in trouble, and also making sure that we're funding the things that are going to be most impactful for communities of color and those most impacted by the war on drugs, as Keisha pointed out, is crucial. So rushing into funding things is, we want these things to get funded. We also want them to get funded right. And we want to make sure that we're not compounding the impacts of the war on drugs, especially on communities of color in smaller counties. So I would motion to delay this by a week.
Okay, Caroline and then Ron.
I think there's enough discussion for us to re-vote because I think there was some confusion and I think we should just re-vote.
I don't think folks have gotten enough time to look into the ethical considerations for a re-vote, though.
Yeah. So my understanding is that where it stands right now is that in terms of the vote, that there are now 10 votes yes, as I understand it.
No, I think we need a full re-vote though, but I had a motion to delay this. I'd like to vote on the delay to see how folks' feelings are about that.
Second.
I second Dharma's motion.
Do we have our legal person here right now?
Allison is present with us today, but because DOJ is not able to provide individual advice, DOJ can provide advice for the council, but not for individuals. And so if an individual has a conflict of interest or is concerned that they may, then they would have to consult the Oregon Government Ethics Commission.
Could the our legal representative blanket a county and say whether or not, because I voted for counties where I had a potential conflict with one of the not a potential conflict. It wasn't a conflict. It was kind of a conflict, kind of like they're saying, like it didn't really affect me, but I know the company, I know what the company does, and I know what they don't do. And that wasn't, here and there, but I voted because that wasn't, it wasn't a direct conflict. There was no conflict. So that was my understanding of it, but I hate to see us delay more funding, but I mean, hey, we do what we got to do as a council. So,
but that's
so I see Jessica and Shannon. I don't know if you want to cut the line, Shannon, or Jessica, and then
yeah, this is Shannon, and I'm sorry I'm not on camera. If I could cut the line for a second. I'm wondering if people are willing to take a 5-minute break and if we can still have a quorum that would hang in there so that we can try to be solid on the votes needed to pass a motion and not. I want to make sure that we're super clear on that internally. And then just to point out, and I think Jessica was going to say this too. So there has been a vote. So if you decide as a council that you want to revisit the vote, then that's what the sort of next motion should be. But I'm wondering if folks are okay with a 5-minute break.
Can I make a
my suggestion?
Please, point of order.
It's another motion on the table too that Dharma made, and I second it.
That's my point of order. There has been a motion and seconded. That has to be resolved before any of these other discussions. Who's chairing this meeting?
I am, and Angela is assisting. So yeah, we are to, if anybody has any more discussion about the motion, this is the proper time for that, is my understanding.
So I do have discussion about the motion. Dharma made a motion to delay. And my motion isn't about like a yes or no, it's more of a technical thing. So if I vote, like Amy said, her understanding of it, and so my understanding of it is I have a real conflict with one of the organizations that was a legal conflict, that if I vote and it goes a certain way, it could be brought up against us in a negative way because I voted, because that one organization is lumped in with all these other ones. If they were separate, I could happily vote on the other ones. But with that one, I'm just a little cautious because I don't want it to come back because I shouldn't have no vote or nothing on that organization.
Go ahead, Steve.
I don't know if I was up next.
Go ahead. I was going to wait.
So just two quick things. One is we are talking about a fair amount of funding. You know, this is $3 million. So it's important to make, you know, we understand it's important to make really thoughtful decisions. And please don't take my comments as trying to rush us to a decision that you all are not ready to make. But here is my caution. You approved all of these providers. And maybe, you know, not enthusiastically, but these are your approved providers, the ones that you decided that were authorized to provide services in Clackamas County. And, you know, without starting a whole process over, there aren't going to be different providers that are able to come to the table. They, at our instruction, put forward recommendations that they believed fit your values and the needs within that county region. I really worry about a process going forward in which the council begins to really look at each of these recommendations and go thumbs up, thumbs down, revise this, and to keep the budget allocation to minimal so that there isn't access to care funds that you need to decide about later. So I think this can get really complicated really quickly. And I just want to make sure that those are also considerations that the council is considering as you decide what next to do. And I think taking a 5-minute break may be a good idea to make sure that we get our full legal advice.
Yeah, you're essentially echoing what I was going to say, which is that, you know, we've approved these organizations. They've been in negotiations with OHA. We authorize OHA to negotiate. We authorize OHA to reach out to additional housing providers. The concerns that were brought up by this subcommittee for the organizations that we funded have been addressed. They've been covered. OHA was comfortable with their responses. We're, for the most part, comfortable with their responses. So revisiting subcommittee discussions essentially would be counterproductive and moving in the wrong direction. The last thing is that, and so I want to leave it there because I know that there is a serious question or a technical question regarding the issue of whether a person who has a conflict with one organization in a county can vote for the whole county. And in my mind, that's the only issue that needs to be resolved.
Just for informational purposes, I put the Oregon definitions of a potential or actual conflict of interest into the chat if anyone would like to review them.
But I do see Caroline and Dharma. Ron, were you finished? You're, okay. Caroline and Dharma do have their hands up.
So I'm signing off. I'm on vacation. I told my family it was going to be half hour. It's taken an hour and a half. I can't no longer, they're waiting for me, been waiting for me downstairs for an hour. So I'm signing off. So if you guys don't have a quorum, the agreement was a short meeting. This is not a short meeting. And so some of us I've signed in, and so I'm signing off. So you might not have a quorum after I leave. I'm not sure about that.
Thank you, Caroline. Appreciate you coming. We have, I believe we have 15 voting members. I may be counting wrong, but we do still have quorum at this time. Take
Bye,
care,
everyone.
Caroline. Thank you.
Dharma.
I'm constantly getting feedback from community members that are uncertain of our process. And I would hate to just spend 5 minutes to consider the ethics of this and get advice, because I think that folks need more time to think about this. I don't think a week difference is going to be that big of an impact. I think to Ron's comment, I don't think that all of us are fully comfortable, or majority saying that most of us are comfortable with this. Could be said, because I don't think we've had the time to review that necessarily. So I just, I would hate to take a 5-minute break and then make a decision that could get us into hot water.
So if we don't have any further discussion, we could vote on that motion now or take a 5-minute break, which I'm not sure. Shannon, go ahead. I see your hand.
Yeah, sorry, Shannon O'Fallon again. I think part of the 5-minute break is to make sure that that we're telling you accurate information about whether the motion passed or not.
Please keep in mind, I did change my vote to a yes.
I don't think you can change it in this. It has to be a whole new revote.
Oh, my bad. Okay.
At this time, we have about 15 minutes left. If we do choose to take a 5-minute break, that would give us 10 minutes until we would need to wrap up for a number of folks here in the room. So
Let's take the 5 minutes and come back at 3:20.
Okay. Let's take 5 then. All right.
Are we going to revote when we come back?
There's a
We're
motion.
going to hear from DOJ to see if that's necessary.
Yeah, because we have a whole motion on the table.
All right, so we'll be back at 3:20 to hear from DOJ and to wrap up the conversation about Clackamas County. Thank you all.
And during this break, is it okay if I ask a question, or do I gotta hold my question? Angela?
If it's something that I can answer, I would be happy to answer.
Well, I just think that we may be sending a confusing message, because some of us are admitting that we have a conflict with one of the organizations and we're still voting. But if our conflict prevented us from voting on them in the subcommittee, how can we now vote on them in this larger committee for the entire county? I just think that sends a conflicting message to the community.
I believe that I may be able to say comfortably that if you were advised by the Oregon Government Ethics Commission that a vote would be an actual conflict of interest, then the vote would, it would be the same situation here. So if you had an actual conflict of interest with any organization that is in Clackamas County, and that, that organization could be in multiple counties. If it is the organization that you have the conflict with, then it would be any county that organization may provide service in. And so if you were advised by OGEC that you have an actual conflict of interest, that would stand here. If you have a potential conflict of interest that would be a statement of that potential conflict of interest. And the OGEC has said that people with potential conflicts of interest are allowed to vote as long as they declare that conflict. And if anyone else has any other questions in the meantime, I'm more than happy to do my best to answer them.
So it looks like we're, what is it, 3:21? I don't know if we've got any answers yet, but I know some folks do have to jump off right at 3:30.
Could you tell me which counties are included in that we're voting on? I mean, which, not county, but which organizations?
I think there was a
Would
slide.
it help if yeah. I'm sorry, Blue.
No, you go ahead, Steve.
Would you like us to bring up the slides, Blue?
Yeah, that would be great.
And are we now trying to implement LCSWs into the funding? Because I thought across the board, we said we were not funding those positions, therapists.
Right.
We didn't even
Did
have a
we,
rubric
or-
for that role, for that.
Thanks for your
Sydney or
patience.
Jessica?
Yeah, thanks for your patience. We have Allison and Shannon coming back in.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for your patience. We just took a couple minutes to make sure that we had the calculations correct and making sure that we had rechecked the numbers on the number of votes and what was needed for quorum. So kind of way that we calculated this is that we needed to check the current number of council members, which I understand is 21 currently. And under the statute, quorum is 2/3 of the number of members rounded up to the nearest odd number, which would be 15. And so in order to pass a motion, we need a majority of quorum. So the majority vote of 8, which is what we had on this vote, is a majority of quorum. So that should actually be a passing vote. So I misspoke earlier. That's a passing vote if 8 members voted yes. So with that, the motion did pass. Now, if the council wants to go back and revisit that motion, a member is free to bring a new motion, and then there could, be another vote. Or the council could also decide to allow that previous vote to just stand as it is.
So I would like to make a motion to revisit it only because I can't vote, but it's problematic for me because I thought I heard something about us funding LCSWs in this bulk of organizations. And as a whole, we decided we were not going to fund those roles. And Ron agreed, everybody in our subcommittee agreed that we weren't going to fund those roles for any organization. So we made those decisions when we made those funding decisions, and now we're going to undo it.
So very briefly, just a couple of points of order. We do still have a motion that was made on the table. If that motion would like to be recalled, it can be. I mean, the motion doesn't want to be recalled. If the person who made the motion would like to recall that motion, that is possible.
That was
And
Dharma.
I would withdraw my motion, and I would second Anisha's motion.
all right, so that is a motion and a second to reconsider this previous vote on Clackamas County approval. And is there any discussion? Yes, Keisha, and then Melinda.
Yeah, I just want to say that, as Steve was going through the slides, I don't think a bulk of folks were paying attention to the positions and the refunding and the redistribution of funds to fund stuff that we said we weren't funding. And a lot of people are tired, antsy, ready to go and just saying yes and throwing it out there. But I think we really need to pay attention when we're really voting on things that we already set standards for.
I see in the chat a request for a list to see the list of the organizations.
Yes, thank you.
Would it be possible to put the slide deck back up briefly so that everyone is able to see? Thank you very much. All right.
So there's one with a detailed information about positions that they were funding. One of them had LCSW, some have more support, more staff support. I don't see a lot of this money going to support the participants themselves, but there was a more detailed slide deck that kind of lined out some of the positions.
while we look for slides, I see Blue's hand, Melinda's.
Oh my God, those are going too bad.
Sorry, Melinda, I'm just trying to find the first one so we can start from the beginning. There you go. I just want to call out real quick. I see some hands, but also I see some folks who have to leave soon.
So one thing that it was my understanding, and I could be wrong, but that somebody who has an LCSW, for example, would be appropriate to be to supervise peers and to provide some reflective, supportive supervision for folks that are doing that frontline work. And I also just want to say, I don't recall the council putting it in their rules that we would not fund a position like that. And I believe we do ask for proof that they have supervision as peers. And it sounds like that's what those positions are sort of doing. And Melinda, I see your hand up and we have 3 minutes. So if you have something quick, go for it. Otherwise, I think maybe we need to vote. I'm not sure
No,
though.
I would like to hear
Go ahead.
from
My hand was
Melinda.
up. I said what I wanted to say. I just know I didn't put my hand back down. I wanted to see the organizations.
This isn't the only organization.
I know that. Yeah.
Okay, if you want to see another slide, I guess I'm just not clear on exactly what you want to see.
I want to see the organizations that would be funding. Like,
yeah, that's this slide.
The first one that you had was the right one.
Oh, okay.
I was going through it and it switched.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Steve, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think OHA is looking for direction from the council. In accordance to Allison's guidance, the prior vote actually did pass. I know there's a motion on the table to delay. At this moment, what we have is a past vote. And so looking for guidance, because unless something changes, what we would ordinarily do in this moment is to move forward with funding these organizations because the council approved Clackamas County. So if that's going to change, we need to know that prior to the meeting ending.
Well, we would have to make another motion to revisit the vote. And in response to Blue's comment about not putting it in the rules, but with OHA staff there and Jessica was there, Angela was there, Stevie was there for a lot of it. When we talked extensively about these organizations, we always, our subcommittee, which did a bulk of these organizations, were very clear that we would fund these things, but we were very clear about not wanting to fund LCSWs because we wanted to see the peer mentors get the full funding support that they need. And we were very clear about that. We were very adamant about that. So for OHA to go to the negotiation table, knowing how we felt about that, and we made it very clear several times in several different meetings, it just kind of feels like a slap in the face.
So my understanding is there is a motion to delay the vote. Can we just maybe vote on that?
And I made a motion also to revisit this vote.
That's right. I think that's the motion. That's
the current motion is Onisha's.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. So yeah, we just haven't voted on that motion, but I believe there was a second, right? Somebody, I hope. Okay, so can we just?
If not, I second it. If not, I second it.
Julie Dharma seconded it. So we have a motion from Onisha that Dharma seconded.
Okay, can Sydney, can we just try a quick vote then?
Let's do a really quick count of who's in the room. We have 14 currently in the room, and that is including 2 non-voting members.
So we do not have quorum.
We do not.
So this is Steve. So speaking to our tri-chairs, I think given this discussion over the last 15 minutes, I think what I would propose representing OHA is that we not enact the vote that passed, that we allow time to bring this back for discussion next week. And so unless you guide me differently, I think that's the approach that I would suggest we take.
I agree. And is there some way we can get those slides? Can you email me those slides?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My understanding is then we can't vote to do anything, so we just would have to come back next week and discuss that further. Okay.
And in the meantime, folks who believe they may or may not have a conflict, please reach out to the Ethics Commission on your own and figure that out prior to the meeting so that the question that you have in your mind is resolved prior to that meeting.
Yes, thank you, Ron. So I think that's everything then, and we're good for this this meeting today. Thank you for everybody that stayed on past what was expected. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.